Hello and welcome to Just Films and That, the podcast that celebrates films we think are underrated, underappreciated, underseen, or we just really, really wanted to talk about them. I'm Alice Oliver, your host, and with me, as always, is Josh Hallam. Josh,
Hello.
How are we today?
I'm very well. How are you?
You know what? I woke up this morning and I was pretty frustrated. So I've got a cold for the first time in about over a year and a half. For the first time since the pandemic began, I've got my first cold. So I woke up and I was feeling pretty damn miserable. But then I remembered that we had a really special guest coming on the podcast, and that really cheered me up. And here he is. He is a comedian. He is a stand-up performer, and he is probably the funniest person on Instagram right now. It's Milo McCabe. Milo, a very warm welcome to the show.
Hey, how you doing? I'm sorry to hear about your cold. It feels almost archaic now, doesn't it? Because nobody had like a proper old school cold for a very long time.
Yeah. No, it's true. Yeah. I've not been near another person this whole time, and then suddenly you start going out again. It's like, blocked nose, sore throat.
Colds are so 2019, Alice. God.
Get with the program. Right. Well, Milo, when we have a guest on, we like to start with a random question just to get to know you a little bit better. But I'll come to Josh first with this one. So, Josh, when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
That's easy. I wanted to be a podcaster.
Well, there we go.
And I was sitting there in the early 90s and people said, what's a podcast? No, I wanted to be loads of stuff. At one point I wanted to be a priest.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not in any way religious. I just think I might just like the clothes.
Interesting. Okay, cool.
I also at one point wanted to be a bank robber and a policeman. So that's like some sort of like HBO drama, isn't it? Like a bank robber who's also a policeman at the same time.
Double life,
Or a digger driver. I wanted to be a digger driver because I liked diggers.
Real broad range there.
I mean, all of those options are still available to me, I'm sure.
Of course, it's never too late.
The priest one is going to be a stretch at this point because I'm not religious. But, I'm sure there's other perks to the job. What about you? What did you want to be?
So I actually wanted to be an actor. Like when I was a kid, like I just remember sort of seeing Coronation Street for the first time and just thinking like, I want to be on the television. And now I'm a presenter, which kind of is like acting because I have to stand in front of the camera and pretend that I'm impartial to things. So
or interested.
Or interested. It's like, wow, you with your story, that's the most interesting thing I've ever heard. So that takes a lot of that skill. Other than that, when I was a little bit older, I did think vet because I love animals a lot, but I was not very good at science at school. So I kind of figured out quite early on that's probably not for me. But yeah, actor was the main one. So I'm sort of halfway there, I suppose. What about you, Milo?
So when I was like 7 or 8, I was a hardcore kind of boffin kid because I don't know, like when you get to a point where someone says, you're the cleverest kid in the class, there's a part of you sort of acts up to that. So when I was like 7 or 8, I wanted to be a solicitor. And then immediately, and I didn't even know what it was. And then, because I thought that's what smart people do. So I wasn't that smart really, was I? But then I obviously, I wanted to be a footballer, but I realized at the age of 9, that was never going to happen. That was like a pipe dream. And then it sort of went like, again, actor, primarily actor, TV presenter. And then from about 16, it was professional drummer. Which I actually managed to do for a bit, which was cool. And I kind of never really wanted to do comedy, but sort of fell into it. But as I was starting to do comedy, I actually got into TV presenting, but really like low-end TV presenting. I don't know if you remember the quiz shows that used to be on from 2 till 6 in the morning.
Of course.
Where you'd have a presenter going, 5, 6, 7, 3, call up now, 75p per call. You could win this money. Right now we've got... So I did that. Right. And you talk about it being an effort. Those were like 4-hour shifts where there's this puzzle. And obviously, that the odds are stacked against anyone getting through. But at the same time, you have to tell the idea that they could win this money on this borderline impossible puzzle that looks easy. And the only relief for me was when I got someone through on the phone and I could actually talk to them for like 20 seconds. But they worked out that nobody phoned in when you talk to people. So they tried to shift you off the phone call as quickly as possible. But I did that for years. But it's hard work. Like, I don't know what kind of presenting you've done, But yeah, that was a shift. You do learn a lot though.
So I do the news. But it's it's mostly 9 to 5 as well. Like so none of that kind of 2 till 6 in the morning. And that was live as well. So you were actually up doing that shift.
4 hours of live, and you have a smile plastered on your face the entire time. And you're doing like 8 cups of coffees a shift, and just the finish line comes.
It's those shows, isn't it? It's like, we're looking for a Queen song. Another one bites there. What's the word? Another 100%, one bite. And then
yeah.
100%. No, it's not bust. Think. It's not bust. Tust. It's not a word. That's not a word.
Dude, they did that. Like, there was this one puzzle. I can't really name names because they could be in trouble, but there's this one puzzle where it's like, win 10 grand and guess this 4-letter word. And they had sort of clues telling you what the letters should have been. Like, it was like a crossword thing. And the 4-letter word that they picked, people were ringing in the whole time for weeks and weeks and weeks. It was a Norwegian word. Like, do you know what I mean? They had this Norwegian word, the totally obscure Norwegian word. And then it went for ages. And then some lad got sacked. One of the camera operators got sacked. And the next day it went, like someone actually guessed this word, flug, or whatever the fuck it was. And then they were like, I had to be that prick who got sacked, found out what the word was and went, right, you know what I mean? And got it in. But yeah, it was properly
the system.
That is naughty though, isn't it? That is naughty.
And really, really properly naughty. Yeah. Yeah.
So let's move on to talk about this week's film, which was picked by Milo. It's Funny Games from 1997. So spoiler alert if you haven't seen that one. So Milo, tell us, what is the film about and why did you pick it?
So I went through a phase, I would say around 2004, where I was really drawn to films that when you watch them, you feel like you've just been punched in the stomach for an hour and a half, right? I don't know why, and I can't watch these films anymore. But films like Antichrist, Martyrs, pretty much anything Michael Haneke made, just anything that gave me like an emotional punch at the time, something that I didn't know what was going to happen, something that would affect me, that would leave me feeling a certain way. I'm not sure what a person's predilection is when they get into films like that. But at the same time, I've also had periods where I've really gotten into podcasts like Sword and Scale and Case File, which are like really gritty, visceral, true crime podcasts that kind of like, if you're on a long car journey, it will speed it up, but your knuckles will be like white on the steering wheel. And you literally shut the car door and you come out and then you remember that you're none of the people in that story. So, and you're just like, oh, God. But yeah, I went through a phase where I was watching these films. I'd never heard of Michael Haneke. And I think I asked for a recommendation in it would have been a video shop at the time, which dates it. I was like, look, I'm into these kind of films. So they gave me this film, Funny Games, and I stuck it in. And the thing I like about Michael Haneke's stuff, he's so naturalistic. It's all very slow. It's all very natural. There's nothing really forced about the acting. The leads, they tend to look like regular people, if you know what I mean. It kind of brings you into this world and it's slow enough to feel authentic. And then, like, throughout his films, something absolutely gut-wrenching will happen. And because you've just been lulled into this sense of normalcy and authenticity, it just rips you open. So like Funny Games, you start off with this couple. And I have to be honest, I haven't watched it since I watched it the first time, which is like 12, 13 years ago. And I wouldn't watch it again. So I don't know if you guys have watched it recently, but I don't know if my memory of it would be as good. I just remember the impact it left on me. So as I remember, you've got this couple, regular couple, like boring middle-class couple. And there's a home invasion from these two lads who sort of get into their house. And this is where it starts to get me, because the villains don't look threatening. They look like the kind of guys that if they invaded your house, you'd shit yourself, and then you'd look at them for a sec and you'd go, oh, actually, I fancy my chances here. I reckon I could probably like wrap a lampshade around the skinny one's head and then I'd take the other dude down. And that's the other thing, is the villains don't look that threatening at the beginning. And that kind of makes it more horrific as the film progresses, when you sort of find out what they do. And I don't know how much more I should say about the film at this point without giving too much away. But the whole film is just designed to poke at you and also hold a mirror up to what you're like yourself as a viewer and what your cinematic expectations are. And what I've found, the reason I think it tends to be underrated or overlooked or whatever, is I don't think people look at it that deep. And I don't think they just watch this gruesome, unpleasant film, and they don't they're taken down this road that Michael Haneke takes them down, but they don't understand why, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
There is a tile at the end of the film, and I remember I watched the film all the way through, and I was gutted. I think I was stood up at the end of it, like with my head in my hands, going, "The fuck? Like, what the fuck?" And then this tile at the end said, "Oh, by the way, if you watch this film to the end, you absolutely needed to. But if you stopped this at any point before the end, congratulations, it says good things about you." Right? And then I was like, and then I think it hit me like exactly what he'd done. Because I don't think I'd have worked it out to that extent if I hadn't read that little tile at the end. I think it was in the DVD extras or something like that. Because what the film is about is basically he's holding up a mirror to you and he's going, "You need revenge, don't you? You need these guys to get fucked up. You need these guys to have horrible things happen to them, don't you?" And then he gives you these opportunities. He gives you these little ins where you think they're going to get away. And he snatches it away. He snatches it away from you every single time. He totally subverts what you want as an audience member watching that film. And he takes it away and he looks at you and he laughs. And as the film goes further on, he does it to like a more conscious degree. So anyone that's used to sort of watching films and understanding them and analyzing them will know at the very beginning, she's in a boat and you see this knife like drop into the interior of the boat and it lingers there for a second too long. And you go, okay, we're coming back to that knife, right? That knife has been locked in my subconscious. I'm going to remember that's there. There's a reason he stayed there. But as you go through, there is a moment where one of the couple shows a little bit of initiative. And that's the other thing. The entire time you're screaming at this couple, fucking do something. Take these guys out. Fucking please. Because they're so unlikable and they seem so pathetic and weak, but they're so in charge. And then there's a certain point, I can't remember if it's the man or the woman, they pick up a shotgun and they just blast one of them to fuck. And I'm good, yeah, thanks, but and then the other dude looks at you, like looks through the screen at you, the viewer, and he picks up a remote control and he presses rewind. And you kind of go back, right, to the moment before she picks up the gun and then he gets it out of the way. Now, at that point, as the viewer, you should be like, I'm not going to get anything I need out of this. These guys aren't going to get fucked up. Then they're absolutely not. However, at the same time, you get to that boat scene at the end. They're all in the boat and you go, oh, the knife, it's my last chance. I remember the knife's in there. She's going to grab the knife. She's going to stab this dude. Right? All of this is going to happen. And then the guy picks up the knife out of the boat, again, looks through the screen at you as the viewer, and just casually tosses the last chance that you as a viewer had of redemption in this film over the edge of the boat. And it's crushing, but at that point, how have you not seen it coming? And the entire film is Michael Haneke going, why do you need to see these guys get battered? You do, don't you? Why do you need to see these guys get murdered? Why do you need to see this revenge come? You know, and I don't think up to that point I'd seen a film that like fucked with me so overtly and in such an intelligent way as that had.
So I would pretty much agree with everything that you've just said. I had seen this film once before, and I think it was when I was in college, they got us to watch it as part of our film studies course. So I had some recollection of what was coming. So literally from within like the first 30 seconds, I was like, oh shit. And my heart was in my throat for the whole thing. It's like that thing you were saying when you said you wanted to watch a film that felt like you'd been punched in the stomach. That was exactly how I felt. It was an exhausting experience, but I was just in awe of the kind of the skill in terms of the writing, in terms of the performance, and in terms of the way that the film is constructed, that it makes you feel like that. Like you were saying about these two guys, very ordinary looking guys, like that skinny one, I reckon I could knock him out. Do you know what I mean? Like they've got all these golf clubs. There are weapons kind of within the house, and yet they're just so powerless to them. And they've got this sort of, the theme of like playing golf and stuff, isn't there? So they're wearing these pristine white gloves and these perfect white jumpers, and it looks eerie as fuck. Like why are they so pristine? Like, and I think they stayed completely clean throughout. Like there was never any mud or like dirt or blood on them, given what they were doing. So obviously the killing the dog moment, it's the opposite of the save the cat moment, isn't it? It's like, in case you needed any more hints that these were the bad guys, they've just killed the dog and shoved its corpse in a car. And when it flops out of the car, bloody hell, the fury that you feel at these characters. And then this just continues throughout. Obviously, they're so antagonistic of Anna and Georg, the married couple, and then their son, Georg Jr., who is he's just like really sweet and innocent and vulnerable. And I thought that actor did a really good job at portraying him. And then obviously they end up like shooting his head to pieces. And it's so unbelievably horrifying, whilst always reminding you that it's a film. And I find that it's such a juxtaposition of feelings, right? It's like he keeps breaking the fourth wall. He keeps reminding you, it's like, oh, hey, what should we do? Should we do this? Oh, I'm going to rewind this bit. And keeps reminding you it's a film. And yet it's still absolutely horrific, even though you know that they're actors. You know that he's looking at a camera. You know it's not real. So I don't know how he did it. But yeah, it absolutely packed a punch for me. Josh, had you seen this film before?
No, so I hadn't seen it before. I had heard of it, and I knew it had been remade shot for shot by the same director. So when I came to watch it, when I knew Milo had picked this, I'd had quite a stressful, emotionally taxing day, and I went to find it on a streaming service, and it just came up some sadistic thriller, and I was like, maybe another day. So then I waited till I waited for a few days, and then I watched it. But no, I mean I loved it. I did. I mean it was so disturbing and unsettling. I mean it's sort of it's similar to what Milo's already said. It's a masterpiece in playing with genre and audience expectation. So it doesn't linger on things. It's not pornographic in the way other horror and thriller films are. So, for example, they make the wife and the mother get undressed, but they don't show it. Other films would show it. When I don't actually think there is a character death that is on screen. I think every single person who is killed, with the exception of the chap who is killed and then they rewind time, I think when they're all killed, the dog, the son, and the dad, it's all off screen. You don't see it. Yeah. So when the son is killed, the skinny one goes into the kitchen to make himself like a sandwich or something, and you just hear the gun go off and then a load of sort of commotion, and then he comes back and he's dead. So to have such a psychological impact by the lack of what is there rather than what is there, I think was really impactful. It does a lot of good things with sort of claustrophobia, like you said, with their clothes that extends to the house. The house is the plainest inside of a house.
So plain, isn't it? It's
it could
bland.
Be a
it's so
hotel.
Unimpressive.
Yeah,
yep.
and I think that is the director and everyone looking at you going, "This could be your house, this." Because it could be it could be anybody's house. None of the clothes or anything in the house has any labels or anything that makes it identifiable. So I mean that's what's one of everyone's worst fears, isn't it? Being attacked in your own home in this way. I mean, if you've ever had anything stolen or if you've been burgled, that's bad enough. But being held captive in your house, I mean, I can't imagine what sort of like living hell it must actually be. They play a lot with stillness as well. A lot of the characters do a lot of just sitting and staring as they're talking and not blinking and things like that, and it's quite unsettling. They do a lot of really good building of tension with innocuous, pointless dialogue. And it's not, I don't mean it's pointless. What I mean is they use politeness a little bit like the way, I suppose, in a more mainstream way, someone like Tarantino might do, in that they have a lot of sort of niceties that suddenly on a dime just change into horrible, a horrible scenario, like with the eggs or with the dog.
Can I have the eggs? Broke the eggs. Can I have the eggs again? Broke the eggs. And then that, because that isolated as an incident, there's nothing to worry about. But because the way, like you say, the way that the scene is building the tension, oh fuck, this is gonna end up somewhere. Yeah. But yeah, no, interesting what you're saying about the things happening off screen. That was something that I'd made note of, like the dog dying, because you all you hear is the dog barking, and then you don't hear the dog barking anymore.
Yeah.
And it's just like, and then you don't really know what's happened. I mean, you can figure out what's happened, but you don't get it confirmed for you until you see that body falling out the car. Same with, you say, with Anna, when they get her to take her clothes off, like, it's not about the spectacle, it's about the loss of control, it's about the feeling of helplessness. It's like, they're not showing you either nudity or like this horrendous violence. It's just the suggestion and the tension around it. But then whilst always making fun of it and making a game of it. And it was just so exquisitely put together to make you feel just so intense. Like, I felt so intense when I was watching it, like every single second. It was exhausting.
I think one of the things that I also read about after I watched it was it's not only holding the mirror up to you as an audience and sort of going, like, well, essentially what Milo's already said. It's also a bit of a comment on mainstream and Hollywood sort of horror and things like that, because I think what it does is you don't see the deaths. In other horror films, they do a lot of focusing on the gore and the torture and things like having someone take their clothes off and the humiliation that is and all that sort of stuff. Whereas if you don't show it, but you do see the result, it's worse, because you're looking at that dog falling out the car going, oh, fucking hell, like, what's happened? Or, there's a point before they kill their dad where they do something to him. You just hear him scream and you don't actually know what it is. I think they cut him with a knife, but you don't know. It never explicitly says.
Your mind fills in the blanks, doesn't it? Yeah. He's like, I can't show you anything scarier than what you would project onto this blank canvas. Yeah. So have some of that, because everyone's going to project their worst nightmare onto that.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it does. It's so clever. And then you add on top of that the breaking of the fourth wall. So breaking of the fourth wall is, it's something that we have come to associate with protagonistic good guys, Ferris Bueller, Deadpool, that sort of thing. And it's those characters who are like, you're having a laugh with them and they're your friend, they're your mate. Whereas this guy's not your mate, but what he is all powerful. Do you know what I mean? Essentially, he is in control of the plot of the film. He is self-aware. He knows he's in a film. And, that's pretty scary. So the connotations of someone who talks to you, you're sort of, again, it's playing on that expectation. You're used to this being, oh, this is a good guy. They're going to guide me through the film. Oh shit, no, they're not. And that's what, that is also so impactful. Or I thought it was anyway.
Kevin Spacey kind of fucked with that paradigm as well, didn't he?
yeah, a little bit.
You're saying that you hadn't seen it since that first time, but the memory does still seem very clear to you.
Like I've never, it's when you get a film that gets you jumping up and down like you're watching a sports event. Do you know what I mean? It was, it made me like watch everything else he'd done. Like, at the time I just went through everything he'd done and it was exactly the same kind of thing, really clever, emotional sort of manipulation, and I tried to recommend the films to other people, but it's kind of an acquired taste, because what's interesting with these films that do make you feel like that, some people obviously don't want a film to make them feel like that. And so they'll come out and they'll go, oh, that was shit. Like, I don't know if you remember a film called Eden Lake.
So you mentioned this and I said, oh, I haven't seen it. And then I remembered, oh no, I have seen it. But so very similar.
For me, that was a 10. That film was a 10. It was really well-made horror, excellent naturalistic acting that made you care about the characters, same sort of sense of impending doom, same kind of like not very physically impressive villains, the same kind of people hated that film because I don't know why, like obviously you have Michael Fassbender in it and the dialogue, him and his partner in the film was so naturalistic. Like it really felt like they'd improvised it. It was that level of brilliant sort of on-screen chemistry. But people come out like angered by it, like they hated the film. Like all the reviews for Eden Lake is like 10s or 1s, like because they'd been so upset, irritated by the idea that these little sort of chavvy types, these teen chavvy types that you see in every high street, had been these huge villains that had caused all of this pain and drama to this sort of likable, charismatic couple. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and I think sometimes people find it hard to sort of detach from that, maybe.
It does. A lot of it does kind of depend what you're going into it for. Like, obviously, like Funny Games, it didn't make me feel good, and it left me with like a real sort of quite powerful, anxious feeling, I suppose. But I understood that to be the mark of some really interesting and unique filmmaking, and therefore I appreciate it. And therefore I would say that I do like the film, and I absolutely would recommend it to certain people, perhaps.
Yeah.
Maybe not like, you know, my mum or, you know, my little sister or something. But for some people, I think for people who are looking for something different, like when you can just kind of get a bit fatigued with, you know, all the sort of similar Hollywood stuff that comes out, the things that are mainstream, the things that are regarded as, you know, the best films at the moment or whatever, and to see something like this, it's just nice to have something different, and it just offers you such a different experience to anything you're used to.
What took me by surprise was the I'm not really into hero films. Like I sort of went on a Marvel binge over lockdown because I hadn't seen them, and that was very edifying. But the new Suicide Squad film was like, within 5 minutes, I was like, I don't know what's going to happen to anyone at any point. And I love that.
Was it a good film? I haven't seen it yet, so no spoilers.
It's
but
really
is it
good.
good?
It's really good.
Is it good?
Yeah, like
interesting.
proper good humor, good writing, and yeah, like within 5 minutes, you will not be able to predict what's happening or who's going to end up where. It was a total unexpected. I watched it for like, let's stick an action thing on because I'm tired, and it was tremendous. Yeah, I loved it.
Oh, good. Something to look forward to.
It's funny how suspension of disbelief really applies to the fantastical, isn't it? Like a lot of people will suspend their disbelief for the Suicide Squad, but because this is naturalistic, it's like it doesn't apply. And like you say, I think another thing that creates the impact that makes it so visceral is it is really naturalistic, and all the people in it, you know, I'm not making a comment on their appearance or anything, but they all look like normal people. You know, they remade this with Naomi Watts in the lead role, and it's like, well, you know, that's a bit different to the sort of people in this film, you know, really glamorous
100%.
people. And the other thing is the performances are really naturalistic, and the cast are excellent. You know, you've got the mum and dad. I think it's Suzanne Lothar and Ulrich Murer. They're very good. I mean, particularly there's one scene, as we've commented on, with their son in the final act, where must be at least an unbroken 7 or 8 minute take where there's no edit, and it's just them just grieving, and it's so difficult to watch, but it's naturalistic. The two guys who are the sort of the antagonists as well, you've got
Paul and Peter, aren't they?
Paul and Peter, the taller one who's played by Arno Frisch, I think it's pronounced. He has all the dialogue, so he's got everything to do. He does all the speaking, and then you've got, I think it's pronounced Frank Gearing, and he has that almost, he gives a sort of weird naivety and almost innocence to his performance, like he doesn't really know what he's doing, and yet he's the one who does all the killing.
I just want to touch on something you mentioned there, Josh. So that sequence you mentioned where they're grieving, obviously their son, he's just been shot in the head. We haven't seen it, but we see his corpse, and then there's blood all over the walls. So that is framed in such a way where behind the mum and dad, so Anna and Georg, they're sort of grieving on the floor, and then there's 3 windows, kind of just 3 standard windows or whatever, but there's no curtains drawn, there's no blinds or whatever. But at this point, Peter and Paul have left. And for that whole sequence, I was expecting them to walk past these windows. I was like, surely those windows have not been framed in this way, because they were just perfectly like in each third of the frame, like 1, 2, 3, so perfectly framed. I was like, obviously they're going to walk past, right? They're going to walk past. So for that whole thing, I was waiting for that to happen. And then when it didn't happen, I was like, like I felt like I'd been choked or something. And I feel like this just kept happening. I don't think I can recall the last time I had this strong a physical reaction to watching a film.
Have you? Yeah, like because it's different. Because if you watch Irreversible, for example, when I was going through that phase,
that matches.
But it's a very different kind of like. It's so much more sort of outright, isn't it? Martyrs, Irreversible. They're like, this is going to fuck you up, right? But this film, like, he kind of worms into your brain. Do you know what I mean? Like it's less of a sort of a gruesome, like, oh my God, that's the most hideous thing I've ever seen. It's more like it sort of stays with you for the reasons that you're saying. Just the way I've never had my expectations as a viewer subverted that much, that overtly. And I think that's why I still sort of remember the film like 13, 14 years on, and not having seen it again. Like I think I blanked out the fact that the kid gets killed. Do you know what I mean? and the scene with the grieving. But as you're saying it, I could picture myself just sitting there in my flat, just being absolutely furious, just like purple faced, sweating, clenching fists. Like it's, and then you get to the fact that, like, as unpleasant as that was, that's someone has made a film that's done that to me, that's raised my heart rate like that. But it's, when he sat down to make that, it's interesting because I haven't really read that many interviews or anything, but I wonder if he was just like, right, I'm gonna fuck people up here. I'm just gonna make something that's just gonna worm into everyone's brain and make them feel deeply, deeply uncomfortable about everything.
So we'll move on to talking about anything that maybe we didn't like about the film or anything that we may perhaps change about it. So Milo, is there anything for you?
Do you know what? Like, off the top of my head, no, not really. I think I was so sort of blown away by the thought that had gone into sort of upsetting me so successfully. I mean, if the purpose of the film was to, because as we're talking about the film now, I'm remembering bits and I'm remembering how I felt as I watched them. Like, and if his aim was to upset you a lot, make you feel a certain way, burrow into your brain and hold a mirror up to what your expectations are and what you're being fed from Hollywood and show you all of that. I mean, that was 100% for me. So I don't quite know what he could have done to have hammered that more firmly into my brain, to be honest. So I don't know if I'd have any immediate dislikes.
Oh, yeah, I understand that.
I mean, I'm not, obviously I fucking hate the whole thing because how it made me feel. But like, so it's a hard question to answer, really. You know what I mean?
What about you, Josh? Can you think of anything?
It's a bit like what Milo said. I hate what the film did to me as I slept with the lights on, but not really. I think there's something that I can't decide if I did or didn't like, which is I almost wanted to know a little bit more about the antagonist's motivations, like why, because they seem to be going from house to house, and it's almost like they don't need sleep because the film ends with them going to another house
to do the same
and they've not
thing.
been to sleep. But I also think the fact that you don't know anything about them makes them even scarier. So I can't quite make up my mind about whether or not, because I could be sitting there going, I didn't need to know that they were doing it because, they were drug addicts or whatever. He does say, he says we're drug addicts, but I think he's just playing on what they think they are. I don't think they actually are drug addicts.
I think so, because they don't rob anything from the house. Because he's like, we're drug addicts and we need to do this to feed our habit, but they don't take anything.
No. The one thing I couldn't get my head around is one of the antagonists seems to be called Peter, but he keeps calling him Tom. Did I miss something?
They refer to each other as kind of Tom and Jerry.
Oh, right.
And Peter and Paul and Beavis and Butthead.
Yeah, I knew.
So I think
calls him Fatty all the way through as well, doesn't he?
Yeah. So I think it's to be sort of a little bit confusing.
Yeah.
And because you can't believe or trust anything that either of them say.
It's almost to give him that. Yeah, it's to give him that anonymity, isn't it? It's to make like this could be anyone. Anyone could break into your house and do this. Even the skinniest and chubbiest guy in the world could break your leg with a golf club or whatever. There's nothing else really. I think the pace dropped a little bit about 2/3 of the way in. But again, I think it's almost like it's done on purpose. because you think that they have gone. You think they've done the worst thing they can possibly do. They've gone, and they must wrap it up. But like then it even plays with your expectations then, because when they come back, the skinny guy, the one who does all the talking, says to the camera and to the characters, "Oh, it's not even feature length yet, so we're going to do more stuff." And that
Exactly.
it's because it's not and it's not an hour and a half yet or whatever. So nothing massive though. I wouldn't be in a rush to watch it again, but that's not because it wasn't a well-made film. It's just like I sort of need to get myself pumped up for it, I think.
Yeah.
That's not,
I mean, it would be good to watch it with someone else. And like, if you're kind of immunized to it a little bit, and just watch them go purple-headed, sweaty, and pacing
family
around
movie
everywhere.
night, right? Daddy's choice tonight. What about you, Alice?
So all I did think at the end was, oh, I wish I knew why they were doing it. Like, I wish I had more backstory and more idea of their motivation, but that defeats the whole point. So that's not a fair criticism. And if, like, he's not going to give me that, because that would satisfy my curiosity and my need to know as the viewer. It's like, why can't you give me these clear, defined good guys and bad guys? And this is why they're bad and this is why they're good. It's like, no, that's not what I'm giving you. That isn't what this film's about. So I don't think you can't really say anything like that and it be a fair criticism. And so then there isn't anything really. And it's hard. It's so hard to... It's hard to try and figure out what you could say, because everything just feels so intentional to try and make you feel a certain way, and it succeeds in doing that. I suppose maybe if someone watched it and felt nothing, or felt bored, or got to the end and they were like, oh, I don't really care about that, then maybe they could critique it better. But if you've had that emotional reaction to it...
They would surely be a sociopath.
Yeah,
like,
right?
Or
surely.
a psychopath.
I'm not watching that.
I'm
not watching that. It's in German. Not watching that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think I have anything. So that's the least balanced I think we've ever been on this
Yeah,
podcast.
but you're right. How do you criticize something that's designed to upset you, subvert your expectations? Oh, I wanted to know this. You weren't supposed to. That goes through the whole thing, doesn't it?
So we'll move on now to talking about the critical reception. So, Milo, if you're thinking sort of out of 10, what do you think this would have got? What would have you...
Are you talking about IMDb?
IMDb score-wise, yeah.
Right. I tend to trust IMDb quite hard. Anything with an 8 or above on IMDb, it's like guaranteed. Like, I was umming and ahhing about a Netflix series called Squid Game. It's just come out, and I jumped on 8.2, and I was like, sold. So I got through the first 20 minutes, and I'm on episode 5, and I love it. I'm gonna go, and I haven't looked at the IMDb score. I'm gonna go. I reckon it's got. Can I have like 6.8 to 7.2?
Yeah, that's.
Is that cool?
That's cool? That is totally cool.
Yeah, that's what I'll go for.
Okay. Josh, what about yourself? Where do you think this sits?
I really don't know. I can't make up my mind. I feel like it might have been. I feel like if you said it was 10, I wouldn't be surprised. If you said
but horror movies get a hard time on IMDb.
Yeah, they do. I'd probably say, similar to what Milo said, perhaps slightly lower, because I'm not sure some people would not that you wouldn't get it, but I think like Milo says, some films are treated quite harshly, and also the nature of IMDb. Quite often you go on and you rate it just after you've watched it, and I can imagine people going on and going, fucking hell, like I can't cope with this or whatever. So I'd say maybe like a 6.5.
Okay. Well, on IMDb at the time of recording, it actually got a 7.6, so a little bit higher than what you both thought. On Rotten Tomatoes, so the audience gave it 83%, which really surprised me. So that kind of reassures me that they sort of understood what it was going for. And then the critics gave it 69%, which I thought was a little bit low. What do you think about
that? Yeah, but I guess like we found it a hard film to criticize. So possibly, a critic finding a hard film to criticize might feel personally threatened by such a thing. And that could reflect in his low score. You know what I mean?
Was there any of the usual stuff that we've seen before? So one of the things we've talked about in the podcast, Milo, is sometimes critics on things like Rotten Tomatoes just say it's just not this film. So like they'll just go, well, it's not The Matrix. No, it's not The Matrix. That's right. That is right. That is a different film. I haven't
since IMDb. I never really read like proper film reviews anymore because it's such a lottery, isn't it?
Yeah, and you got to make up your own mind.
Yeah, I'll go on IMDb and like, all right, that's 15 to 20,000 people or whatever who've got together and come up with this, and then I'll read the first couple of reviews to just get a flavour for what it is. But no, I don't really tend to read film reviews anymore like that, to be honest.
So some of the things that they're saying here. So one of them calls, is it Haneke or Hanek?
Haneke. Is it Haneke?
Yeah, I think so. I was wrong on both fronts. So.
God, I called him Haneke. Haneke. Yeah.
So one of them says Haneke is snooty in how disturbing it is. One says that it's just too violent and there's no rationale for it. One says that it doesn't invite audience exploration and just pummels them with the violence.
That's bollocks.
I just feel like these people just weren't into it.
But it's not. It's not that violent. It is violent, but the point is, it's
an experiment in sadism.
It's implied violence, though, isn't it?
It is.
It's not.
You see him whack him in the kneecap with that golf club, and then that's pretty much it, right?
Yeah. I think they've missed the point.
I mean,
I think they've missed the point.
I don't get on with the critics anyway.
No,
they have, because that whack with the golf club, that's just to sort of like set your perceptions for the rest of the shit that you don't see throughout the movie, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's all so thought about and stylized and studied.
What do you reckon then, Alice?
So I do think that's underrated. If we're going for the critical reception, for me, it was a film that was doing something that I just hadn't seen before. And anything that gives me such an intense emotional reaction, whether it's a good one or a bad one, I think deserves people's time of day. So 69% from the critics, I would say that's underrated. And I would say it's underseen as well.
Yeah.
What about the both of you?
I would echo everything you said. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and that's a hat trick. I agree as well. I think it's underrated critically. I'd probably say my opinion was with the audience of Rotten Tomatoes, like 80% or whatever it was.
Yeah,
I'd say
really sort of pleasantly surprised with that. Really,
but I'm not in a rush to watch it again because
I'm never going to watch it.
Yeah.
No.
Why would you?
Why have we talked about this?
You should have turned it off 20 minutes in. Like that was the whole point. He wanted you to.
Who hurt the people who made this film? Like, what's wrong with them?
That's it. Like, that's the thing that really blew my mind right at the beginning. Did you watch this to the end? You absolute sicko. It's like that's the director telling you that. You know what I mean? Who'd watch that again? Jesus.
So there we go. Funny Games, underrated and underseen. A brilliant film choice, Milo. And I suppose thank you for making us watch it.
Yeah, cheers.
So thanks for that. Thanks for the nightmares. So tell us a bit about what you've got going on at the moment and where can people find you and follow you?
Yeah, so at the moment I perform as a character called Troy Hawke. And I'm on pretty much every sort of platform as Troy Hawke and touring all over the country, performing every weekend. All my tour dates are at milomccabe.co.uk/tour, but I'll be screaming about them on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and what have you. So that'll be out there. So yeah, just type in Troy Hawke with an E. You'll get me.
Troy Hawke with an E, and that's across Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. People can find you easily.
That's across everything, yeah.
What would Troy recommend?
Fabulous.
What would Troy recommend a film?
Interesting.
What would Troy recommend? Troy, I think, would go for some real obvious It's a Wonderful Life, feel good type.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I think Troy would have turned off Funny Games after the first 10 minutes. And that would have said very good things about him. He wouldn't have needed to see revenge. He'd have been like, oh, good Lord, no. Oh, honestly, stop it. No. Let's find something else to do, shall we, everyone?
Maybe next time. Maybe next time we'll have It's a Wonderful Life. The most not underrated film of all time, possibly.
Exactly.
Oh, Milo, it's been such a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been fun, despite the dark, unsettling context of what we were talking about.
And it's been weird, obviously, having this conversation while at the same time marshalling my kids who have been coming in intermittently. But no, it was interesting. And you brought me back. I think I blocked out most of that film through PTSD. So it's all coming back to me now. I'm feeling like, oh.
Sorry about that.
Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you so much, guys. Really enjoyed it.
So there we go, Milo McCabe, everyone, with Funny Games. Absolute pleasure to host him. What a great discussion about a really interesting film. And that's the adjective I think I'll use.
Yeah, I think it's one of them. If you're into films, it's an exercise in something, and I think it's well worth checking out, and it's very, very, very well made. But,
certainly.
It's not a getting a takeaway on a Saturday night film.
Yeah, it's not enjoyable in the traditional sense,
no,
but
it's
an
not.
Absolute masterclass in cinema, I believe. Yeah. Well, thank you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Hopefully you're not too bummed out, but I would recommend going to see Funny Games if you haven't seen it. In the meantime, if you want to head over to Apple iTunes and leave us a 5-star review, that would be amazing. We'd really appreciate it. We're also across all the social media. It's just Films and That everywhere you look. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, even on TikTok. You could drop us an email at filmsandthatpod@gmail.com. We've also got a pretty cool website made by our amazing producer, justfilmsandthatpod.com. Josh Hallam, been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much for having me. Cheerio.
Bye.